My name is Roger Dickerson, and I'm working with the kids at the Satchmo Summer Jazz Camp and composition. And I've been working with the camp since about 1997, some 12 years or so. Well, I enjoy working with students, no matter what age, and the key thing is getting people involved and in touch with their own creativity. And while I've been a university professor most of my life, and of course working with teenagers and some younger people in that kind of setting, I had the opportunity because of my niece, Kimberly Carbo, who was working with Jackie Harris, and at the very outset, the inception of this camp, and it was an opportunity for me to work with younger people than I had been working with at the university campus, and I was only too happy to come and work and look forward to it every summer. Oh, well, of course, it is important for the city because it is important to the city's spirit, the very central things necessary for its growth as well as its well-being every day and every year. New Orleans is an extraordinary city in that it has served as a great center which has produced, in particular, jazz musicians who come one wave after the next. No matter where one travels on this planet, people are familiar with New Orleans because of its creative output, which has come about through its musicians and their creativity. And of course, oftentimes people who are aware of the work of composers and the kind of work that I do as a composer don't always make the connection between the actual writing of music and that concern of being in touch with your creativity. Whether or not you're improvising or you're playing with notes or without notes, one has to, if they're to be an artist of any real importance, has to be in touch with that creativity to express anything, to, as it said, to make a statement of some kind, because you're speaking from that part of your being, yourself, your spirit, your soul, if you will, that has to do with this great power that we have as men. And of course, this is very important to New Orleans. New Orleans is noted for its creativity in music and cuisine and architecture. It is one of the, I often say, nondescript cities in America, one of the few that stand alone by itself. New Orleans, and there are some others, people don't agree with them, but most places that you are in America, you could be in one place or another. They all look so much and are very much the same. New Orleans is not one of those nondescript cities. It has a very special culture. It has a very special, how can I say, things which make us who we are in terms of our expression. Well, the importance of the camp to the students in the summer is manifold. and that is that children have something to do, and there's off months from their regular school training, and where they can get together with other students who have the same kind of interest, in this case music, and have a very intense, for 2-3 week period, an intense undergoing, if you will, experience in the stuff of their interest. This music, playing the music, being in touch with their instruments every day. Often students don't pick up their instruments every day throughout the year for the entire day. Here at this camp, they have their warm-up, their technical exercises in the morning, and either they are with some kind of ensemble then the next hour or two before lunch, or they're with me and composition, talking about writing and how that relates to playing, and the importance of being in touch with that creative self that I just talked about. And I often bring up Louis Armstrong in the class because Louis Armstrong had this great creative genius, and he is who he is because of that, not because he could play certain notes on the trumpet, but because he was very creative, and he kind of synthesized a language which many musicians today draw on, expressions, licks that emanated with him. This is real creativity. And so the kids in the summer have a chance to be in touch with the mechanics of holding the instrument, blowing the instrument, but even beyond that, putting it in the context of how it works with their creativity and how they can use it as their instruments as a vehicle for expression, whether they're expressing their own ideas or whether they're taking a composition, an arrangement by some person who is no longer alive and recreating again. And of course, in order to do that, here we go, they have to draw on this creativity that I've been talking about. So the camp is very important to the kids in the summer. Well, you know, whether it's the 21st century or the 20th century or the 19th century or the 18th century, all of these times, these periods have produced great musicians, you know, in the Western Hemisphere, in America, in Europe, and in other places as well. I think the issue has more to do with the experience that the person is having, the young musician, in their own time, in terms of being exposed in a way that helps them to discover the legacy of those who have gone on before him, like the Louis Armstrong Jazz Camp, and being in touch with some of the musicians and the teachers, as myself, who are helping them to discover their own creativity, because I think finally that's what it's about. And not only to discover their own creativity, but to discover those commonalities which have to do with our relationship with others, which has to do with our humanity. And I think, you know, if we can get the students in the 21st century to discover these profound things about humanity and our oneness and our relationship with others here in America and other, whether it's the West or the North, and then beyond these borders, because our musicians are traveling and have traveled to Africa, to Europe, to the Far East, and they are well liked. The music has circled this planet, for reasons that have to do with this common sense of humanity and expression and the profound things I think that are being expressed through the music. The fact that I am a formally trained musician, having gone through the local schools and on to do graduate work at one of the best schools, I think, in the country for music, Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana, and then to go on as a Fulbrighter to the Musikakademie in Vienna, where I was for 2.5, 3 years as a Fulbright student. And then returning to New Orleans and coming back to New Orleans after having this undergoing, academic undergoing and this artistic undergoing and living in Vienna for those years that I was there, listening to music, being with other composers, and of course reading about the lives of composers, and not only composers but other visual artists and these times and previous times, and visiting the old cities, and well, looking at the work of Michelangelo, one of the great artists of in the Western world. One learns a lot about how artists work, and of course I returned to New Orleans with this kind of experience and decided to go back to Bourbon Street and play again with specific intent in mind, because I discovered that the only thing that I could do was to be myself, who I was, and to get in touch with those roots that I really knew, and the very same way as all of the visual artists, the composers that I read about while I was in Europe and people I knew. And so I returned to my roots and started working again and to rediscover it with this new perspective. And of course, this is what I've been doing for the rest of my life since that time, and producing music out of that kind of intent of doing things, of getting my own cultural experience in my music, which is the only thing that any artist can do, I think. I mean, one can become very intellectual about what they're doing and be part of different camps and that, but to really get those things which are very natural to you, and particularly coming out of a place like New Orleans, it's an incredible cachet of valuable, important musical material, much more than one person could deal with, but I'm just doing it from my own perspective. And so I've written some pieces. I've been fortunate enough to write a piece that was commissioned by the New Orleans Symphony at the death of Louis Armstrong back in '72 when he passed. They commissioned me to write a requiem for Louis Armstrong, which I titled A Musical Service for Louis, which was premiered here and has been played around the country, and which was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. Another work that I did that had to do with the roots here, which was performed by the New Orleans Philharmonic with Werner Tokarnowski, who was the conductor at the time. Orpheus and his Slide Trombone, which was narrated by Roscoe Lee Brown. It was a piece for orchestra and narrator, and the story was about New Orleans. Well, actually, the story had been written by Joanne Greenberg, the lady who did I Never Promised You a Rose Garden, and I talked to her about it, and she told me that I could make the setting here in New Orleans and in Algiers, and so her Orpheus had been transported to the Middle West, and in my version of her of our story, Orpheus was a slide trombone player who played in the quarter. And so not only using the story of New Orleans and those kinds of traditions that have to do with New Orleans, music as well, but my own take on it. I mean, I wasn't writing popular songs and hit tunes. You know, I was getting at something else to do in my own thinking with the spirit of the music. For the bicentennial, I was commissioned to write a piece, a piano concerto, which is titled New Orleans Concerto, which was premiered by the New Orleans Philharmonic with Werner Torkanowski as well. And this piece was nominated for Pulitzer Prize as well. Well, since I'm talking about my works now, right now I'm finishing up a piece that I started some years ago and got away from, and now I'm back to. And it's a musical. It's a comedy. It's about two ministers. The title is Preacher Man, Preacher Man. And it's set in New Orleans in the late 40s, and it ends up with a hurricane. Well, I think the camp we have this year is really a very good one. The students are very sharp, bright, and it's just a joy to work with them. And I'm looking forward to the next week and a half. We're about at that midpoint now.